in Pakistan, we do not have functional local governance system. So the young people are the one who are actually demanding such rights where they actually try to influence the local functionaries, which are not the elected bodies but the administrative bodies. These committees are actually working closely with them to get access to the resources and to influence them for their rights pertaining to health and education, safe drinking water, and sanitation.
Hi, welcome back to our podcast, The Zero Hunger Project. I'm your host, Suman.
I'm Stacia.
And today we have Zia Rehman from Pakistan. He's joining us, and we're going to have a conversation. Tell us a little bit about Zia.
It's my pleasure to welcome Zia to the podcast today. He's a mathematician turned social activist dedicated to advancing socioeconomic development, democratic governance, and the political empowerment of youth and women. He founded AwazCDS Pakistan in 1995, a leading civil society organization promoting civic engagement and social justice. Zia completed postgraduate studies in NGO leadership and management from BRAC Bangladesh and School for International Training in Vermont under a Global Partnership Scholarship, and earned a postgraduate diploma in managing people and organizations through the Lums McGill Social Enterprise Development Programs supported by a CETA scholarship. Over 3 decades, Zia has become a prominent development advocate, lobbyist, rights activist, writer, and poet, focusing on empowering marginalized groups, especially women, girls, and youth. He has led numerous research studies on human rights and gender equality in Pakistan. Zia was a finalist for the Nelson Mandela Grasa Machal, am I saying that right? Grasa Machal Award for Youth Engagement and Local Government for the SDG Action Awards for his Leave No One Behind campaign. He has represented Pakistani and Asian civil society at numerous international forums, including the United Nations, and was part of the delegation that met UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on shrinking civic spaces. In 2019, he presented Pakistan's first citizen-led mechanism report on SDG implementation at the UN High-Level Political Forum. He also founded the Pakistan Development Alliance, a national forum of NGOs focused on SDG implementation, governance, and accountability. He served on the Executive Council for the Pakistan National Committee of the IUCN and led the development of Pakistan's first SDG Citizens Dashboard and Civic Space Monitor. Zia, how do you have time to do anything else in your whole entire life? That is like such a prolific bio. I also want to mention he's currently the first Secretary General and Director of the Asia Development Alliance, leading regional efforts to strengthen civil society, promote sustainable development, and ensure governance accountability. Welcome. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you very much for this generous introduction, Stacy.
Wow, you certainly are a busy man.
Yeah, it's a quite busy time going on this year actually
Mm.
because of so much of conferences and global forums starting from the FFD4 till date. It's all busy time.
No, Zia, absolutely. And I had the honor and privilege to meet Zia in person at the high level political forum in New York at the UN for the Sustainable Development Goals. And it was amazing listening to you speak and all of that. So that brings me to my first question to you, that having led campaigns like Leave No One Behind for the SDG implementation in Pakistan, what lessons have you learned about ensuring the hunger eradication efforts truly reach marginalized and vulnerable population?
In fact, one should understand the situation in Pakistan. The very recent report of World Bank says that 45% of the population in the country, like almost 107 million people out of 241 million total, are below the poverty line. Um, yeah, so it's a huge number of people who are below the poverty line, and 42% of the overall population is stunted. The children are stunted. 28% are wasted. So it's such a horrific figures that we actually have in Pakistan. So to me, I think it's really important to engage. with the marginalized communities. And every poor person in this country is marginalized person because they don't have any interaction and any engagement in the policy making, and they don't have any say in the policy making. Rather, they even do not have any influence on the policies. So I consider them the marginalized population. So we have a huge marginalized population. Um, the people who are like women and minority communities, the people like 15% of people living with disabilities, and a huge population of transgender community, they are further marginalized as compared to the general population who are suffering from poverty, inequality in this country.
So, how important is it for you then to empower these marginalized populations? Particularly, you've been a champion for women and youth for decades. How does empowering these people help at the community level?
In fact, this is really, really important because Pakistan is an agrarian society, and most of these women and the young people do find their livelihood in the agriculture work. So, almost 76% of our population lives uh, in the rural areas, and 90% of them are having their livelihood in the agriculture sector. So more than 76% of the women in the rural areas, they work in the agriculture sector and rural agricultural workers. They face lots of challenges. So it's really important to sensitize them, to engage them in the processes where they can actually learn about their rights. They know about their rights. So the women agriculture workers who live and work in the agriculture sector in Pakistan do not have equal rights. They do the similar work for similar hours, but they get half the pay than the male. And they also face harassment at the workplaces. Although the country has this anti-sexual work harassment act at the workplace, but that doesn't apply at the agriculture sector. So to me, I think it's really important to engage with the woman, which is already 50% of the total population of the country. And for the youth, you're asking me about youth. 65% of the population in Pakistan is young people, and they the economy of the country is agrarian, but they do not have any control over the agriculture because they don't own land. 20% of the land is owned by the 80% people, whereas 80% of the land of the country is owned by the feudal lords, which are like less than 20% of the total population. So this is the big challenge. So this lack of fair land distribution in the country is the biggest challenge. So if we see this 60%, 65% of the young people, if they don't have these fair resources, particularly in the agrarian country where the biggest resource is land, and if they don't own those lands, so you can imagine that how marginalized they are, and then how pity they feel in their livelihood opportunities.
Those are some pretty shocking statistics, actually, Zia. It's hard to kind of comprehend the magnitude of these problems. What are some of the programs that are being initiated at the community level? Can you give us a couple of examples?
So what we did actually, we engaged the young people in several programs where we actually started sensitizing them on their fundamental freedoms and on their rights. So we do have the youth action committees in Pakistan in various cities and various rural areas. So we do engage them to influence the local governments. In fact, in Pakistan, we do not have functional local governance system. So the young people are the one who are actually demanding such rights, where they actually uh, try to influence the local functionaries which are not the elected bodies but the administrative bodies. So these committees are actually working closely with them to get access to the resources and to influence them for their uh, rights pertaining to health and education, and safe drinking water and sanitation. So this is one kind of work. The other kind of work that we do is with the agriculture workers in Pakistan. We have established their unions in a couple of districts. These agriculture workers are being trained on smart agricultural tactics, because unfortunately the women do not own land, rather they work as a worker in the others lands. So but still they have this a portion of the produce with them, because they do not have that ownership of the land. So half of the portion goes to the owner and half of the portion comes to the woman who actually work on those lands. So the better the capacity of the woman, the better the produce is, and the better they will have the earning. So this is kind of work that actually we do with these women and young people, to engage them and to make sure that their food security is ensured.
And just as an aside, what is the literacy rate? Like how are you combating all of this in terms of being able to communicate with people?
This is quite unfortunate that almost 28 million boys and girls are below, are illiterate in the country, and they are not in the schools. 28 million. This is huge number. I tell you, this is huge number, and unfortunately, the laws and the constitution provides equal opportunity and the guarantee that every child below the age of 16 should have free and compulsory education in Pakistan, and this is the responsibility of the state. But unfortunately, a huge number of boys and girls are out of school. Pakistan is amongst the,
Why do you think they're out of school?
because there are no schools, because the parents do not send them to the schools, because there is a poverty, because there is an inequality. The number of schools are far less than the number of mosques in Pakistan. The very recent Pakistan census report, the economic census report of Pakistan, published in 2025, if you just Google it, it says that we have 600,000 mosques in Pakistan, whereas we have only 243,000 schools in Pakistan. So if we have more mosques than schools, so you can imagine that how many children are deprived of going into the schools. So this is the biggest challenge. And unfortunately, the government of Pakistan spends less than 2.1% of its GDP to the education, whereas the required rate as per the IMF should be 5.7. And if we spend like 5.7% of our GDP until 2030, we may be able to enroll all the children out of school into the school into the next like 10 years. That is possible. But spending less than 2.1% of the GDP on education means nothing. Whereas in our region, India spends like more than 4%. The Bangladesh and Sri Lanka spends more than 4% of their GDP on education.
Yeah, that's
That's
that's brutal.
appalling.
Um, how do you mobilize a government to see the value in its own citizenry? I mean, these kids are the future of Pakistan, and Pakistan is not investing in their future. So how do you get out from underneath that?
This is really a challenging situation, Stacey. That's the because of the lack of the democracy in the country. Mobilizing the government and holding government to account is really, really challenging. We do not have that kind of uh, privilege in Pakistan as a civil society organization to influence the government as you may have in your countries. Here we do not have that kind of democracy. Other we have this autocracy, and we have this somehow the selected government, not the elected government. So usually what happens is that influencing the government officials is really a challenge. We do engage ourselves with the progressive parliamentarians. We try to influence them often. We try to engage with some of the bureaucrats who actually understand some of the thoughts related to the related to the empowerment of the community. But it's really a difficult challenge. For the last like several years, the regulatory frameworks that are being introduced in this country to control the civil society organizations are really pathetic. And because of that reason, I think it's not easy for the civil society actors to influence the government policies. But still, the civil society organizations are directly engaging with the citizens. Like my organization, Awaz, has been actually trying to mobilize the citizens through citizen scorecards on SDGs. Through Pakistan Civic Space Monitor, we are reaching out to the public and asking them about their understanding on several issues. And then we are actually relaying that information to the government that this is what the citizens of this country are thinking about. So probably that can be a little bit of helpful to influence them, but actually influencing them is not an easy thing.
Of
Yeah,
course.
wow.
And that was the next question to you, Zia, that how are you localizing the sustainable development goals in Pakistan to the regular common people? How are you doing that?
In fact, starting 2016, when the SDGs were introduced, we were the first which actually introduced the localization process in the country. And we decided that we will not be implementing any program or project directly in Pakistan. Rather, we will be reaching out through this community based civil society organization. So we decided to empower the community based organizations. We engage them, we build their capacity. So the process is that we do evidence generation at the local level, and then on based on that evidence, we build the capacity of the local civil society organizations, and then through them we reach out to the masses for the mass mobilization to create demand, and then based on the local evidences, we also reach out to the parliamentarians and the influential local influentials. Through media, we try to influence the parliamentarians and the local influentials. So these are different tactics and strategies that we use simultaneously to influence and to mobilize and to have success. Just for example, very recently we had this Free and Compulsory Education Act passed in 2022, and it was an effort of 7 years. Uh, in 2019, we had this Women Agriculture Workers' Rights Act passed in one of our province, and that was an effort of like more than 7 years. So it's not easy to influence the policies, and but it is also not easy if we have the policy. So getting that policy implemented in Latin spirit is also not easy, because allocation of resources to implement that policy is also a challenging task in the context of Pakistan, which is actually already overburdened by the IMF and the debt crisis.
Of
Right.
course.
To add insult to critical injury. Zia, how do you, I don't know, circumvent your government? How do you go from sort of local programs to attaching yourself to international frameworks like the UN without having a government that's interested in helping you do that? How do you make that Herculean leap?
So, in fact, it's not that the government is not interested in any kind of agenda. So, the government is like very proactive to follow whatever the global agendas are. Say, for example, when the SDGs were launched, Pakistani parliament was the first parliament in the world that has recognized SDGs as the national development goals. And we were engaged equally, we were engaged. The civil society was engaged in developing this first ever citizens led voluntary national review report, and that I myself presented to the US UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. These are some of the uh, important events that I can share with you, that the government is giving permission to the civil society organization to engage with. But when it comes to the fundamental changes, and when it comes to the policy level changes, and when it comes to the resource allocation for the grassroots level and for the marginalized community empowerment, there we feel a lot of challenge at the end of the government. However, we have been given spaces to connect globally, and to bring the knowledge down to the community level, and also share the knowledge with the global partners, so as we can actually bridge the gap, and try to build a kind of connectivity between global and the local agendas.
Am I understanding this correctly that there is a gap between what is being said theoretically and what is happening practically on the ground?
Yeah, this is the challenge. So if you look at the policy sphere of our country, you will find such a brilliant policy. Say, for example, one policy related to the transgender community. I don't see that any other country in this world has the transgender protection, transgender rights and protection law, and they have been recognized as a third gender. And this is the first country in the world that has been recognizing transgender as the third gender. And they have given all the, what you call, by law, they have given all the priorities and protections. But when it comes to the implementation level, the killing of the transgender community people in Pakistan is the highest in the world. So there is no protection at all. So this is the challenge. So the policy and the practice gap is huge, and there actually the civil society organizations are facing challenge when it comes for the implementation. We try to influence, but we also receive uh, like uh, retaliation, not retaliation, maybe a kind of response, not a positive response from the other side.
So I'm trying to understand this even a little further. Now, the government is being very proactive in coming up with great policies. I know the Pakistani government
On paper.
on paper. I know the Pakistani government is quite involved in the UN as well. They are the presidency of the uh, Security Council, all of that currently. So I get that piece. The implementation is very poor. Now, is it poor from the government standpoint, or just the people in Pakistan do not want that change? Where is that disconnect?
No, no. People anywhere in the world want best things. Actually, the people do not have any challenge. The people want. The people actually vote for democracy. The people fight for democracy. The people fight for human rights and fundamental freedom. But unfortunately, the overall challenge, the geopolitical situation of Pakistan doesn't uh, allow the government to free the people. Actually, this is quite unfortunate. I cannot say much because it's a little challenging. Yeah.
Well, first of all, that explains why you have such a prolific bio, because it sounds like there's a there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done, Zia, and there's no sleep for you, I'm afraid, my friend. You just have to keep swinging away. Um, what innovations or approaches do you think are going to help you bridge that gap moving forward? What's your plan?
So our plan is actually, invest more on localization, because this is really very, very important. The more we reach down to the local civil society and local marginalized communities, the more we will have a buy-in from the common people. So this is one thing. The second thing is, I think this social media is really, really important. Reaching out to the people, sensitizing them through the social media is uh, is another wonderful approach that we have been actually following nowadays, and that has been actually bringing us a quite positive response. The third thing is that I think we should try to influence the like-minded parliamentarians and influential people in our quarter in the country where we actually working. So these are the three major strategies that we have been following. One thing that I have learned over the period is that mostly the local influential and the parliamentarian do not accept the global reports and global facts and figures. So they want that this is something concocted, and this is against the Islam, and this is against the Pakistan. So we want our own reports and our own facts and figures. So we try to invest more on the generation of local evidence that they believe. So very recently, actually, we generated that local evidence that what is happening with the women agriculture workers. like almost 90% of the women living in the rural areas are working in the agriculture field. They have been they have been facing lots of challenges, low wages, harassment at workplaces. So when that fact actually went up to the policymakers, then they actually decided to develop and um, uh, prepare a law on women agriculture workers' rights in one of our province. Still, we are struggling to have that in one of the largest province of Pakistan, called Punjab. Punjab doesn't have that law, so we are still struggling for that, and we are trying to influence them through our fact sheets and local evidences. So this investment on local evidence generation is also one of the important tactics that we are using, and maybe a little innovative way of influencing the policymakers.
Can I ask, if you were to start your activism journey all over again, knowing what you know now, how would you change your plan? What would you do differently, or if anything?
What I will do, I actually already did that once. I was an expansionist. Like starting from 6 people, we went up to 452 people, 17 offices, and that was an expansionism. Like I wanted to be bigger and bigger and trying to change everything. With the passage of time, I have learned that it's not possible to do everything. So we have been now trying to trying to be a little selective, and we have decided that we can only do policy research and advocacy. We are doing that. I have closed all my offices, said goodbye to all the people who were working with me. I decided to work with the smart team, with smart tools, and reaching out to the masses through the community-based organization. So this strategy has been working very well. So to me, I think if I were to start, I will be more focused, and I will be actually acting as per my capacity and do not think beyond the capacity. Earlier, I was doing that, and I have learned that over the period of time.
Great
Wisdom
advice.
is an incredible thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Wisdom in hindsight.
I still don't have that,
No,
but that's okay.
it's fine. You're doing okay.
No, that's absolutely great advice. So, do you want to go with your last question?
I always ask Zia, our participants, two questions, and they sometimes go together and sometimes they don't. The first one is, what is the project that you are working on currently, or an event that has happened that you never get to talk about on a podcast or in an interview that you'd like to talk about right now? And my second question is, what is your best case scenario? What is your pie in the sky hope for the people of Pakistan?
Okay, so the project actually that I wanted to work is that actually I want to uh, initiate a citizens-led process in the world, because I personally think that whatever is the global agendas we have been actually witnessing in the coming years and in the recent past, all of them are now failing, and they have not produced the results that we want. So, what I personally think that there should be a citizens-led process in the world, there should be a citizens-led agenda in the world. This is one of my dream that we should actually initiate a kind of process where we have the uh, engagement, the meaningful engagement of the citizens that can actually lead us towards a global agenda that can be followed up by everybody. So this is one. The second thing that I would have always talked about, and nobody is talking about, that we should stop, saying that these programs and projects are people centered. To me, I think we should actually talk about the ecological centered process, ecocentric processes, because to me, the human being is also part of the ecosystem. And if we actually try to invest everything through the human being, everything by the human being and for the human being, that would not work. We have to think about the living being, and this whole universe is actually suffering because of this human centric approaches. This should be ecocentric approaches. So this is the second theme of mine. I hope that the world would be actually thinking about that, maybe in the coming weeks and maybe coming months, years, 100 years or 200 years. I don't know. Uh, and about my hope on Pakistan, uh, was it your last?
Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty much.
I want to know what your best case scenario is for your programs and for the women and children of Pakistan and food security and just basically holistically what your best case scenario is. What is your hope for your projects and the people?
I think I see a lot of positivity. I think that Pakistan is having 65% young people. The youth has a lot of energy, and the youth is being sensitized nowadays. Uh, and you see that in our neighboring countries, we see that this emergence of the Gen Zs have influenced a lot the young people in Pakistan. So I see a lot of positivity and a positive hope in Pakistan, where I see that the citizens will be having a leading seat in decision making and in policy making and in changing the fate of this country.
Well, I hope that's true. I look forward to watching them change their circumstance and
Absolutely.
change the world.
Absolutely. And Zia, thank you so much for your time and talking to us. You're incredible what you do.
Yeah,
The work you're doing, incredible. I've heard you speak before. Very passionate, and certainly you're an asset to your country.
absolutely.
Um, and I really hope your dreams come true.
Thank you very much for having me for this wonderful podcast, and I hope that it will have an impact on our audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zia.
Take care.
Take care. Okay, what do you think?
I have a lot of thoughts.
Tell me.
Well, I just think it's interesting. This is not the first time we've spoken to somebody who lives in an autocratic country because we've spoken to somebody in the UAE.
Yeah.
But it's a totally different vibe, isn't it, than the conversations we've had with people who live in democratic countries. And I think it was very interesting that he said something that I thought was incredibly profound, but he said it so subtly that if you weren't listening for it, you wouldn't have known. He said, for people who don't understand an autocracy, we have a selected government, not an elected government.
100%.
And he said it so matter of factly that if you weren't paying attention,
That's a way of life.
yeah. And so when you absorb the profundity of a statement like that, living in a place that is a democratic society, and you realize that this man is trying to accomplish all of these things with a government that was not um, put into power in a free and clear election.
And I think in country, whatever my knowledge of country like Pakistan or many other countries around that part of the world,
Mhm.
it is not just about the government as well.
No, I mean, there
It
are
is the lots around.
special interest groups upon special interest groups.
Exactly.
And then, of course, there's the Islamic factions and that needs to be taken into consideration as well in terms of decision making.
Absolutely. And for Pakistan, especially, the reason it's very interesting for me personally is what Zia mentioned, the disconnect between policy and what's actually happening on the ground. I have known countries where, of course, the government is autocratic.
Yes.
And they say, no, these kind of progressive policies are not cool. We are not going to do it.
Right.
So be it. And I get that. But in Pakistan, it's different. The governments are coming up with in paper policies which are pretty progressive and great, but on the ground, it's completely 180.
And yeah, we have to be careful about this conversation too, right? Because
100%.
we want to make sure that we just need to be careful.
Yes, exactly.
But it's interesting to see that their outward facing international profile is such that they are saying one thing and internally they are doing something else. And there are a lot of reasons for that.
100%.
Pakistan has a lot of profile internationally for a number of reasons that have to do with defense and all kinds of other things. I thought it was very interesting that he's decided to circumvent that glaring gap between what the world sees and what they're implementing by when he said, our Islamic leaders, for example, don't wish to believe any of the statistics from the outside world, from anybody else, from any of the governing bodies that are international, because they think it goes against Islam and what have you. So we've come up with our own statistics that are, I don't know, is Islam friendly, I guess, or that is in a language that they're willing to hear. And then they're acting on those. And I find that stunning, like a stunning workaround.
100%. And one of the statistics that I was totally taken aback by, and not that I didn't know, he posted something earlier this year on LinkedIn that I read, a report, and I think he was referring to the same one.
Yeah.
That for every school in Pakistan, there are 3 mosques.
Yeah.
Let that sink in for a second. And it's not about just mosques, it's about a religious organization. There is 3 religious spaces for every school.
Right. I mean, in the mindset of the separation of church and state, of which there is none in Pakistan.
Of course.
The one thing I will say about all of the statistics that he talked about, which were really jarring, is that 65% of the Pakistani population is considered youth.
Yes.
And it made me think, I was going to ask him a question about access to social media in Pakistan. And
I was about to ask that question
state sanctioned or whatever, because we saw through what was then Twitter, the proliferation of information through the Arab Spring, right?
Yes, we did.
And they used social media to get messages out. And it was very effective.
Of course.
And so these kids that are basically now, going to come up and be the largest generation possibly in the history of Pakistan, right? This generation that's coming up.
65%, yeah.
They're the ones that all have technology in their back pocket. And it will be interesting to see, like, I thought it was very interesting to hear him talk about what he would do differently if he knew then what he knows now.
Yeah.
And I think what's going to happen, the big game changer for everybody is the upsurge of technology and how things are happening online.
Yes, but also knowing that 28 million Pakistanis do not go to school.
Yeah.
They're not literate.
Yeah.
Now, what does that mean? Technology, illiteracy.
Okay, so let me say this.
Let's understand that for a second.
Let me ask you this question, though, right? Because it is possible to be technologically literate and not actually literate.
Absolutely.
And the other statistic I found interesting when I was living in India is that there were more cell phones than bathrooms.
Yeah, so I wasn't talking about that piece.
But it's the proliferation of technology that these people are going to get an education on technology.
Yes, which is not controlled.
Right.
That is what I was trying to get.
Yeah.
To. Is they're not educated.
No.
In the sense of education.
No. Formal education. Government state sanctioned education.
And they're getting their education through digital media.
Yeah.
Which is supposedly pretty open.
And I mean, I'm here for that in a way, although it is terrifying because we've had chats about AI and misinformation and all of that stuff. But for the most part, what that means to me is that they're getting access to information that they would not have gotten
Otherwise,
and that fills me with hope because, yes,
you're optimistic.
I am.
I'm being a little bit pessimistic here because yes, they are getting the education that they wouldn't have got otherwise in a classroom. They're getting the world,
and they're creating
education.
networks, Suman. Like
they are creating networks.
They're
but
creating their own
I
infrastructure.
always, the conspiracy theorist in my mind, will question who is getting to them faster. What are they actually learning faster? I don't know that answer.
My take on that, knowing absolutely nothing about this, is that on a government level, nobody cares enough to intervene in technology to that degree. What I'm hoping is, don't make that face.
I
don't make that
know
face.
that.
What I'm hoping
just saw the U.S. election last year.
Okay, stop. What I'm hoping is that while they're busy putting on an international face and not doing anything inside their own country, that the kids of this country are creating some kind of an upswell and they're communicating with each other and they're doing something positive. And then you're not going to say anything about that. You're going to be like, yes, Stace, I'm sure that's what's happening. Let's help them any way we can.
I'm going to be hopeful.
Okay.
I'm going to be hopeful.
That's all I want to
but
hear from you.
I did want to bring up one more point in this, and this is not a negative thing at all. It was really interesting for me, not in this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Very recently, we saw the regime change in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a very young conservative woman who got first woman prime minister.
Yes.
80% of young people below 30 voted for a conservative person in Japan.
Yeah.
It was surprising to me. I'm not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing.
So let me ask you this question. Is she fiscally conservative or socially conservative?
Both.
Okay.
Both. I think what I read,
there's cultural relativism in that as well.
100%.
Though, right?
But what I also read, and this is just me reading out of media, that people certainly like the languages around having jobs.
Yeah.
Japan, for the people of Japan.
Yeah.
We need better income.
Yeah.
We need better economy. And the prime minister was very good in having those narratives, which got the youth rallying. Which is interesting.
I would also like to posit that conservatism in Japan and conservatism in Pakistan is different.
Yeah, 100%. So 100%.
We're not comparing.
No,
we are not comparing apples and dump trucks. Right. But
I'm not comparing it all. But the principle
is interesting.
Of it.
Yeah, and I think there it's more of a question of culture and structure and consistency and continuity and. I don't know. I mean, I'm extrapolating here. It feels more oppressive than that. And it's one of those situations where you talk to somebody who's literally a frontline worker. He's literally on the front lines of trying to help a completely impoverished, disempowered, disjointed citizenry try and get some dignity and autonomy and agency in their lives in some degree. And you have conversations with these people and you think, oh, okay, well, all of the problems that I have been suffering through are really, that's why these conversations are so unbelievably important. Not the least of which is it gives Zia a chance to talk to people that he wouldn't normally get access to, although he's very prolific and he travels a lot. But also
we wouldn't get.
It's for us to understand that there are places in the world, and we understand those things intellectually, but we just put a face to the understanding now that there are places in the world where whatever it is that you think your problem is isn't even on their radar.
No. And in one particular spot, if you got it, he said, I can't say more.
Yeah.
I got to be quiet.
And I mean, all of this, that's why I'm trying to be as circumspect as I ever can be about these types of things, because this is like high stakes, no joke.
Absolutely.
You know, all kinds of things happen.
We are still very lucky in a place like Canada. We can talk a lot freely.
And we can challenge our government.
Exactly. But many places you cannot.
A lot of places you
can't.
And
it is really interesting. But it was a great conversation.
Particularly since any success that he has and is incumbent on and getting some kind of alliance with sympathetic parliamentarians, right? So, I
Absolutely. And
mean,
it
we want
was
to make sure.
also great to hear that they did have opportunity through the government
Yeah,
to make presentations to the UN,
yeah.
to meet with the Secretary General.
Hmm.
It was all through the government. So it's not all that bad, but it's
No,
also a
don't say
face
that.
outside
It's
and a face inside. And
yes,
that is the
it's
issue.
bad. It's
Yeah.
bad, Suman.
Yeah. No,
It's bad.
I know what you're trying to say.
But there is at least some
Willingness.
possibility.
Yeah. Okay. That's a better word. Possibility. I was saying willingness, but possibility is a
Yeah,
better word
yeah.
to
And
bridge that gap.
and it's I've loved talking to all of our guests, but it's this type of interaction that I love so much about participating on this podcast, because I think it's not just informative about food security and the SDGs, but it's part of a much larger
Lifestyle.
conversation about what's going on in the world.
Exactly. No, I think this was great. And I'm very happy that Zia decided to come to our podcast,
Yeah.
be as open as he could,
Yes.
and give his heart out and
Yeah.
speak very freely. I hope you all really enjoyed this conversation, learned a lot like we did.
Hmm.
And as you can see, sometimes we don't agree as well. And we shut up when I need to. But overall, I think it was a fantastic conversation. I
Yes.
hope we can get more guests like this from around the world
Hmm.
to have these conversations. So you sitting out there listening to us, watching us, can get a sense of what's happening in this
Can
world.
be better informed. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you are not following us, please follow us, the Zero Hunger Project podcast. And we are looking forward to our next guest next week. Take care.
See you soon.